Over the last 6 months, I've gathered up every version of the white or silver iPhone from the OG to the 15, and there's really 4 or 6 different designs depending on how you look at it. Curved, squared, rounded, plastic, stainless, aluminum, glass, and titanium are all ways that the iPhone generations have been differentiated through the years. And although there have been some different color options of certain iPhones through the years, I always find the white or silver iPhone versions to look the best. So let's take a trip down memory lane and take a look at how all of these designs have progressed over the years. I watched the unveiling of the original iPhone live in 2007, and like many, I instantly knew it was going to change the world. With its 3.5-inch, 160 pixel per inch display and no physical keyboard, this thing could run a much more capable browser than any other cell phone at the time. And yes, I know this is laughably small by today's standards, but remember, cell phones were on a mission to keep getting smaller at the time, and even the smartphones had much smaller displays than this. Everything about this iPhone was revolutionary, from the full touchscreen that actually worked and responded like you would expect a touchscreen to respond like, from swipe gestures to visual voicemail, a great iPod experience, maps, and so much more. Even the super recessed headphone jack was iconic because of how stupid it was. You needed a 3.5mm adapter just to use basically any headphone. This design is iconic, and in my mind, this is the first thing that comes to mind when I think about an iPhone, even today. My wife and I ended up purchasing one each in August of 2007, and we had to move from Sprint to AT&T, which ended up costing us nearly $2,000 all said and done, which is insane. The two-tone silver and black still looks cool today, and the way the metal just wrapped around the edges of the device made it kind of like a fidget device or a worry stone. The only downside to the design was, just like with the stainless steel on the back of the iPods, the bezel and the Apple logo instantly collected scratches from the second you took it out of the box. One of the biggest complaints about the original iPhone, besides not having an app store or copy and paste, was the cost. So the iPhone 3G addressed that. And I have to be honest, I was really not excited about the design of the second generation iPhone, which came with this polycarbonate or plastic back case. But the change and the new carrier deals brought the iPhone down to $200 in the US, giving the iPhone a much broader appeal. From the front, you really couldn't tell a difference between the original and the 3G. The internals were also almost exactly the same, except for the 3G connection made the smartness of the iPhone and apps usable when away from Wi-Fi. With the second generation iPhone, you could choose which color you wanted. The iPhone 3G came in black for the 8GB model, and if you upgraded to the 16GB model, you could get either black or this white color. There was also a few different design changes between the original and the 3G. The black plastic buttons were changed with metal silver buttons. The bottom speaker grills changed from this grill to a bit of a mesh. And on the top, the headphone was now not recessed. And this ushered in the TikTok design for iPhones. And no, not the TikTok you're thinking of, but the TikTok of using a design more than once. If the 3G was the tick, then the 3GS was the talk. And then the iPhone 4 and 4S and 5 and 5S, etc. The iPhone 3GS was almost an exact mirror design-wise of the 3G. And I know that the S and the S series of iPhones have always confused people, but originally it was for speed.
Now the S simply stands for speed.
And the iPhone 3GS was 2 to 3 times faster than the original iPhone and iPhone 3G. But the only real difference in design between these devices is the back logo went from a gray to silver, and the white actually stayed whiter. And this iPhone was the most comfortable iPhone to hold in your hand ever because the rounded back, it just kind of nestled right inside the palm of your hand. Then in 2010, Apple released the iPhone 4, and oh my God, was this a stunning device. But before I get to that, let's quickly thank today's sponsor, Ugreen. This is the Ugreen Nexode X 65-watt charger, and it can fast charge up to 3 devices at the same time. The Nexode X series continues the design of the Nexode family while providing even more advanced technology like GaN Infinity to make them smaller, lighter, and more powerful. With the ability to charge at up to 65 watts, you can charge a MacBook Air M1 from 0 to 51%, or an iPhone 15 to 60% in just 30 minutes. Charging 3 devices at the same time is easy with the Nexode X 65-watt charger, and it supports all the fastest charging standards, including Samsung's programmable power supply or PPS 45-watt super fast charging 2.0. This super compact 65-watt charger fits easily into any bag and even uses all of Ugreen's safety features like thermal guard protection 2 to protect against short circuit, over voltage, over temperature, and over current. So if you want to pick up the versatile new Nexode X 65-watt charger, you can save by using the links and codes in the description below. And my thanks to Ugreen for sponsoring this video. Like many tech enthusiasts, I followed the Gizmodo saga where a prototype iPhone 4 was left in a bar and basically revealed everything about the physical design of the iPhone. But when it was officially announced and released, I was still amazed at how good this thing looked. The new iPhone 4 had a lot of new things. It had a new design with flat stainless steel sides, an Apple-branded processor, new separate round power buttons that wasn't a volume rocker, a front-facing camera for the first time, a rear flash, micro SIM cards, and a super high resolution Retina display. This is the first Retina display on an Apple device, and it was 326 pixels per inch, which is more than any desktop monitor you have probably used even today. The metal and glass sandwich was such a big change from every other plastic phone at the time. The stainless band on the iPhone 4 and 4S is both the structure of the device and the antenna, which of course caused the famous antenna gate, where if you held the iPhone tightly, you could actually attenuate the signal and drop your connection. Of course, there was a media frenzy about this, and Apple basically came out and said, "You're holding it wrong," and then offered everybody free bumper cases. But none of that mattered to me because I was living overseas, and when I visited Hong Kong, I was able to get a black market iPhone 4 for way too much money, and I was happy. Then came the 4S design, which mirrored the 4 in a talk release, where the only difference really was the split in the bands, where presumably this is where they fixed the antenna issues from the original 4, and then the iPhone could actually switch on the fly between two different antenna systems on the iPhone 4S to help fix that attenuation issue. What's interesting is that the white iPhone 4 did not actually ship for 9 or 10 months after the black version because there was some kind of manufacturing defect with the white colors. I'm not sure what it was about white iPhones, but Apple was definitely having some issues. And maybe that's why they moved over to aluminum with the iPhone 5 and 5S. Fast forward to 2012, and the iPhone 5 was the first time Apple changed the screen size, moving from 3.5 to 4 inches, which was a big deal at the time, even though many Android phones were 5 inches or larger. Moving away from glass and plastic, Apple went back to aluminum on the back sides of the iPhone 5. It was also thinner, and there was this new lightning connector on the bottom. There's new speaker grills instead of a mesh, and the headphone jack was moved to the bottom as well. Oh, and these chamfered edges that Apple loved to talk about so much.
We then use crystalline diamonds to cut the chamfers. It's so exact that you're left with a near mirror finish.
I moved back to the US at the end of 2012 and promptly picked up an iPhone 5, which felt like a big jump from the iPhone 4. And I was excited to use Siri for the first time. And just like with previous versions, the iPhone 5S was almost exactly the same as the iPhone 5. The real only physical difference you can see is that the home button changed, which removed the classic home button icon and replaced it with a fingerprint reader that was far more accurate and faster than any other fingerprint reader on the market. It was crazy. You didn't have to swipe your finger on a strip like some Samsung phone. You simply rested your thumb or whatever on for a fraction of a second and your iPhone was unlocked. Touch ID is still the fastest, most accurate feeling fingerprint reader I've ever used. Excluding Touch ID on the sleep buttons of the iPads, I really hate that. The iPhone 5S was also the first iPhone to come in something other than black or white with the new gold color option. Along with the iPhone 5S, Apple also released a second iPhone the same year for the first time, and that was the iPhone 5C in 2013. This was an iPhone 5 internally with a polycarbonate plastic outside that was, well, unapologetically plastic. I probably only saw a couple of these iPhone 5Cs in the wild and only ever played with the friends for maybe a few minutes or so. But this was probably the most fun, casual iPhone Apple has ever made. And the colors of the iPhone 5C were super bright and fun, and I wish Apple would do more of this. Something about the rounded back edges and the fact that it was made of plastic made it just feel less like a piece of jewelry you needed to protect and just something you could use without worrying about it. But this iPhone 5C was kind of a one-off design that was actually kind of a precursor to the iPhone 6 with these bottom speaker holes and slim side volume buttons. The iPhone 6, 6 Plus, 6S, and 6S Plus brought about the biggest design change ever in iPhone, with massive screen jumps from 4 inches to 4.7 and 5.5 inches. With the big size increases, the sleep button was moved from the top of the device to the side to make it a little bit easier to reach. I was able to score an iPhone 6 through the company I worked for at the time, and besides the original iPhone, this was the most excited I was ever for an upgrade. These are unibody aluminum devices, ditching all of the glass and plastic on the back with very prevalent antenna bands that, as I recall, were pretty divisive. This is also the first time we saw an Apple camera bump, which also annoyed people, and it was funny because all of Apple's ads basically tried to hide it. I mean, look at this tiny little camera bump compared to where we are today, and imagine being upset by this. People hated that the iPhone didn't sit flush on a table anymore, despite the fact that the 3G and 3GS were completely rounded on the back. From the front, these looked like an iPhone, just much bigger. And because the 6 Plus was basically the same thickness as the iPhone 5, but much bigger in size, It turns out that they could actually easily be bent, which became known as bendgate. But Apple upped the aluminum strength on the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, making it more rigid, and that problem seemed to go away. I still can't believe how big of a deal that was to some people. It seemed like common sense to not bend your iPhone or place it in your back pocket and lean up against a bench or whatever. The iPhone 6s was also the first iPhone S series to have an S on the back of the iPhone, and it came in a rose gold color that was basically pink. And 6 months after the release of the iPhone 6, Apple released the iPhone SE, which was basically an iPhone 6s in an iPhone 5s body. It was a top-of-the-line iPhone for someone who didn't want the new, larger devices. With the iPhone 7, not much changed aesthetically from the iPhone 6s at first glance, but the antenna bands were moved all the way to the top and bottom of the device, which made it look a lot better and cleaner, in my opinion, than what we had on the 6 and 6s. Apple also leaned into the camera bump a bit with a raised lip in the aluminum, which many affectionately called the wart. And on the bottom, Apple removed the headphone jack. Gone. Poof. A lot of people were upset about this, myself included. It made no real logical sense. Apple tried to spew some BS about how it removed the headphone jack so that it could make the iPhone waterproof, but they also just happened to release the AirPods that year. But fast forward to 2024, and I could care less about having a headphone jack now. Maybe they were right. The iPhone 7 Plus also added a second camera for the first time that was a 2x photo zoom and nestled it into an even bigger, uglier camera bump. In 2017, you could get the stud or the dud. You could get the regular old iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, which looked exactly like the iPhone 7 and 6s and 6, but replaced the unibody design with a back glass piece that allowed for wireless charging for the first time. Or you could spend $200 to $300 more and get the all-new iPhone 10. Swapping out the aluminum for stainless steel once again, the iPhone 10 was a true all-screen design, or edge-to-edge as Apple liked to say.
The display fits edge to edge, top to bottom.
Gone was the home button we had used for 10 years, replaced by new swiping gestures. Like every actual new design iPhone, this one really grabbed people. This was the most premium, luxury-looking iPhone yet, even though it was the same basic design and shape of the iPhone 7, but with a new 5.8-inch display that was even larger than the 7 Plus in a smaller, more compact device. This was the first OLED iPhone, and because Touch ID was gone, Face ID was born, and it's still my favorite way to unlock a device, even though there's a notch that people still can't get over. Everything about this iPhone was stunning. From the design to the display, the Face ID, the cameras recorded 4K video, HDR photos, there was animojis, a notch, and all for the very, very high price tag of $1,000 starting. But the thing about this iPhone is the second you picked it up, you could feel how dense this thing felt. It felt premium in a way that other large phones at the time did not. It felt balanced and actually easier to hold somehow. The stainless steel, like the original iPods, just seemed to scratch and scuff instantly, which did kind of suck. With the iPhone XS, I can't really tell them apart, but one of them has these little antenna bands on the frame that the other one doesn't. There was also a 6.5-inch XS Max and an iPhone XR with new 6.1-inch displays. The iPhone XR looks like the iPhone X and the iPhone 8 had a baby. It got a new 6.1-inch all-screen design, ditching the home button, back glass panel with a camera wart, and went back to aluminum rather than stainless steel on the edges. Oh, and every iPhone of this design in the US was able to remove all of that extra text on the bottom of the iPhones, leaving just iPhone, which, I guess looked nicer. And like the iPhone 5C, the XR also came in some great new colors. The iPhone 11 and 11 Pro came next, and the designs between the Pro and non-Pro phones came closer together. The 11 Pro continued with the stainless steel, while the 11 stuck with aluminum, a trend Apple continues to follow. The rounded sides and thin buttons still look the same as the iPhone 6 essentially, but a little bit thicker. The 11 only came with a 6.1-inch size, but there was a 5.8-inch 11 Pro and 6.5-inch 11 Pro Max. The Pro devices gained a third camera in the ever-expanding camera bumps, so now there was wide, ultra-wide, and zoom, compared to just the wide and ultra-wide on the standard iPhones. 6 months into this generation of iPhone came the reincarnation of the iPhone 8, but now it was called the iPhone SE 2. Similar to the original SE, this one had some of the guts of the latest and greatest iPhone 11, but packaged in an older design. The only real physical difference between the 8 and the SE 2 was that the white was actually white compared to more gray on the iPhone 8. Between the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro, there was really no functional difference between these devices, other than the third camera and the OLED screen on the Pro models, which was about to change with the iPhone 12. The iPhone 12 line was finally a shift away from the rounded edges of the iPhone 6. There were now flat sides all the way around the device, like the iPhone 4 and 5, and the screen no longer curved into the edges. The iPhone 12 came in a new mini 5.4-inch size and the regular 6.1-inch, whereas the 12 Pro came in at 6.1 and 6.7 for the Pro Max. Many people did not actually like the sharper edges of the iPhone 12, but I found that these flat sides were much easier to grip and hold on to than the curved iPhones from previous years. They provided more surface area for my fingers. The shiny stainless steel of the 12 Pro also offered more grip in my opinion than the matte aluminum sides of the regular 12, but otherwise, the bands, the buttons, the cutouts, everything was basically the same between these two devices. And since I'm showing off all the white and silver iPhones, I actually want to point out that the iPhone 12 actually has a bit of a pink hue to it, but it's called white. When I originally ordered the 12 mini, I ordered the blue color that was really nice. It was a nice dark blue. But had I ordered the white, I probably would have been pretty disappointed in this pink hue and returned it. The back of the 11 Pro and 12 Pro look very similar, but the cameras and camera bump is getting a bit bigger on the 12. They both have that frosted glass. But one thing that the 12 Pro got was 5G, so it got this new antenna on the side because, well, 5G just got real.
Well, today, with iPhone, the wait is over. 5G just got real.
The premium stainless steel and glass design of the iPhone 12 inched forward with the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max with just the slightest of changes. First, the cameras and camera bumps just continued to get bigger, like the sheriff's hat in Scary Movie 3. Then Apple kept bringing the sleep buttons further down the sides of the iPhone, but they seemed apprehensive about lowering the volume buttons for some reason. On the display, the iPhone 14 Pro changed from a notch to a dynamic island, which is neat because it can show updated information from apps, timers, music, whatever, but also can be slightly more distracting than the notch in games and movies. The back color of the iPhone 14 Pro turned more gray from the pearlish color of the 12 and 13 and even the 11. And the iPhone gained a bit of weight and depth from the iPhone 12 Pro to the 14 Pro, like we all do as we age. And if you're wondering why I'm not showing the regular iPhone 13 and 14, it's because Apple didn't make standard white or silver 13 and 14s. They made Starlight, which is not white. And I know the iPhone 12 was not really white, but they called it white, so that's why it's included. And Apple also released an updated iPhone SE 3 between the 13 and the 14, which looks exactly like the iPhone SE 2 and the iPhone 8, so no need to rehash that. And the last iPhone design change as of the making of this video was the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro. The biggest change from the 14 Pro to the 15 Pro was the change in the stainless steel frame to titanium. The matte titanium looks and feels great. It's also about 20 grams lighter overall from Pro to Pro. With these rounded edges, the 15 Pro also just feels better in the hand. The side buttons continue their gravitational pull towards the bottom of the iPhone, and the cutouts are the same. But the mute switch, which has been a staple since the original iPhone, was upgraded to an action button, which I just use for turning the flashlight on and off. But it still looks like an iPhone, and even the antenna bands are all in the same places. The cameras and camera bump on the back of the iPhone 15 Pro continue the tradition of getting slightly larger year over year, and the matte back glass leans closer to the pearl color of the 12 and 13 Pro than it does to the more silvery color of the iPhone 14 Pro. And of course, who can forget the transition finally from Lightning to USB-C, something that people have been asking for years, and now the iPhone has it, and now everyone can shut up. But other than that, there really aren't that many differences between the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro, or the 13 Pro, or 12 Pro. In fact, the further away from the original iPhone, the less exaggerated the changes get. And with 6 or so major changes that have happened throughout the life of the iPhone, it's hard to imagine what really will come next. We have a device with a large, flat display that does almost anything we want it to. What else do you really need? To me, the iPhone 4 was the most innovative iPhone design yet. Everything about it bucked the trends of plastic rounded phones at the time, and it was at a time where the pace of innovation inside the iPhone was crazy. I mentioned that the iPhone 3G and 3GS were the most comfortable iPhones to hold because they just nestled in your hands. But once we went to larger screen devices like the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, then the Max size phones, there was just no going back to a smaller device. And that's probably why there's no mini iPhone today. We have a pretty good idea of what to expect is coming up next. We'll probably get an iPhone 16 that is essentially an iPhone 15. We'll see a new iPhone SE4 that is probably like an iPhone XR or maybe even an iPhone 12, who knows. But then what? We keep clamoring for new designs to make it fresh or give us something to talk about, but maybe the design around the glass is becoming more and more irrelevant as seen by the slower progression of change throughout the years. Regardless, I'm still excited for what the next iPhone can do and even the small design changes that might come with it. But what do you guys think? What was your favorite iPhone throughout the years and where do you think we go from here? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see my questionable decision to go caseless with the iPhone 15 Pro Max and see how that's working out, check out this video right over here. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.